Alabama Crimson Tide, man. New era with Kalen DeBoer out there running the show. There's a lot of talk around what they're doing differently. The private school has taken off the uniforms, okay? They are now playing music at practice. We got media access. So what is the latest, as we can tell, out there in Tuscaloosa? Get a membership at Bama OLine. We're going to go through some high notes right here, but if you want up-to-the-minute intel, Tim Watts, crushing the game. Okay, crushed the game. Travis Ryer, crushed. Clint Lamb. I'm telling the Monstars over there as well. So get a membership to Bama OLine to stay dialed in to all things Alabama football. From what we can tell when it comes to spring practice, according to the folks that we're talking to, there is a bit of an evolution going on within the offensive line. Now, when I say evolution, I mean their bodies are changing, all right? We used to be a little bit more of a let's be big, bad, strong enforcers. They still want to be enforcers. They still want to beat the living daylight out of you physically. But what they're doing now is they're changing the body type a little bit, okay? So maybe we were 330. Let's get you down to 315, 310. Maybe you were a little bit heavier than that, dropping some weight. The reason for that, with Kalen DeBoer's system, he wants to get those guys out in space, both playmakers and linemen. He wants to do the pin pull. He wants to do the power. He wants to have the screen game going and get elephants on parade, as we would say, with the most admiration for those big boys running the tunnel screens. We want to have our big boys be athletic so we can attack every area of the field. And so what Kalen DeBoer is doing here is obviously trying to tailor his personnel behind closed doors to get that done. Now, I'll tell you this. One, I like this. I think this is a good move for Alabama if you want to run Kalen DeBoer's system, which obviously they do. And the other part of this is I love that Kalen DeBoer is saying we're going to do things my way here, baby. Like that was one of the key things we have said here since he got the job is like you hired Kalen DeBoer to be Kalen DeBoer. You didn't hire Kalen DeBoer to be Nick Saban. You hired Kalen DeBoer to do his thing. And so he's not tippy-toeing around, well, how did they used to do things? How'd y'all run it last year? He's like, listen, I'm 104-12 as a head coach. I know what I'm doing. I haven't coached in the SEC, but gosh dang it, if I don't swing my sword here a little bit and go in with what brought me here, dance with the one that brung you, one of our favorite phrases on this show, Kalen DeBoer, it looks like by how they're developing their offensive line, currently dancing with the one that brought them. Moving the offensive line to a little bit more of a speed offensive line, if we can say that. Speaking of the offense, though, Jalen Milroe, a lot of questions for us on this show. Hey, how's he going to fit with that system? Hey, there might be some guys on that roster that throw the ball a little bit better than Jalen Milroe. The return so far out of spring practice is he has been consistent. He's been consistent. It's a key word now that you didn't always associate with Jalen Milroe. That's not throwing shade. That's just calling a spade here, baby. Like Jalen Milroe, if you just knew without a shadow of a doubt, as an Alabama football fan, you were going to get his B-plus game every single game. I think most Tuscaloosa residents would say, yeah, that sounds good to us. We'll take B-plus Jalen Milroe. And guess what? You get B-plus Jalen Milroe every single game, you're going to win a lot of ball games. You're going to be really good. And so, again, it's behind closed doors for the most part here. We're kind of taking Kalen DeBoer's word for it. But to call Jalen Milroe consistent in a new offense that is going to be, in my opinion, a little bit more pass-happy, pass-centric, I think that's a good sign. We'll see how it develops. Now, tell you what, I can't wait for the A-Day because with Jalen Milroe being non-contact, we're going to see him isolated as a passer in Kalen DeBoer's offense. How consistent is he? How comfortable is he? Does he go to the right place with the football? Is he throwing the football consistently in the right place? And I mean right place, like right spot on the body. We got man coverage running over the top, or we throwing it back shoulder? We got a guy tailing behind, or we putting it out in front where only our guy can get it? Very excited to watch that. The other buzz is they are operating like he's the guy. Some of y'all in Alabama said, no, duh, of course he's the guy. I just think it's worth addressing that that's how they're going about it right now, but can't wait to see how this thing develops. At the wide receiver position, Jeremy Bernard, transfer from Washington, was with Kalen DeBoer, and he's, from what we can tell, the most comfortable in that offense. This makes sense, right? He's familiar with the staff for the most part. He's familiar with Kalen DeBoer's standard and way of doing things. He's hitting the ground running. He's doing well. Kobe Prentice now, this is why we think social media is so important to pay attention to in this time of the year in the college football world. Kobe Prentice, a little bit of sticky fingers on display the other day. Just a snippet from practice, little highlight. But Kobe Prentice goes full just oven mitts, snags it behind him with one hand, doesn't break stride, keeps on going. And just a practice clip, I understand it, but nonetheless, it was impressive. And from what we can tell, that clip is right in line with what is being said about Kobe Prentice. He's been generating a lot of buzz. He's been really impressive. Don't be surprised if he ends up being in that wide receiver one conversation when it comes to what they do in the fall. Just saying, don't be surprised if he's in that conversation. I don't know if he'll be that guy, but so far so good for that wide receiver room. That's massive because we understand now for Kalen DeBoer, Michael Penix Jr. was the catalyst for that offense last year, right? I mean, he was pretty much putting the ball wherever he felt like last season. But at the exact same time, like, you don't have the success Washington had last year if you don't have some absolute dogs in the perimeter. Like Rome Odunze is about to get a check with a lot of zeros next to it because of how successful he was in that offense last year, because how consistently he won his matchup and made plays. So it's a two-part system. Jalen Milroe's got to throw the ball to the right spot and be consistent doing it, but you got to have some dudes that can make you pay on the perimeter if you don't give them the proper attention when playing against Alabama's offense. So that's the latest out of that wide receiver room. Defensively, I always try and tread lightly when it comes to my opinion on defenses during the spring, because part of you is trying to just be a good teammate during spring practice. Like, if I come across the middle as wide receiver and I got a clean shot as a safety, I might not take his head off like I would if it were the opposition and we're playing any given SEC team on a fall Saturday. Like, the tempo might be a little bit different. Also, how coaches do it during spring practice is sometimes you'll go a thud tempo, which means just wrapping up. Sometimes it's just tagging off. The bottom line here is Alabama defensively is still a work in progress, which with a new staff you would expect. The secondary is still developing. Okay, so some young cats, Red Morgan and Zabian Brown, were names that I've heard are making some strides out there. That's a good sign that you got the young bucks getting after it, a little bit of action there. They feel good about their pass rush. The big thing with this defense, which I want us to be all aligned on, they lost 3/4 of that production that contributed to last year's SEC title. Okay, so a lot of new faces. New faces means an acclimation process. And oh, by the way, you sprinkle in the fact that it's a brand new staff, brand new system than what a lot of these guys are used to. So what I would say with Alabama, give it some time. Let's not overreact from what we see in the spring game. Let's not overreact from the first month of the season. Let's give it some time to find its footing. And I think overall that defense will eventually find a version of what they expect in Tuscaloosa. But again, it's a process. Let's hold our opinions very loosely of what they're doing in Tuscaloosa, especially during the spring. But that's the latest right there. Now, I'm always curious when we talk to our guys about spring ball, what the unquantifiables are. Like, I always ask, hey, what's the temperature? What's the feel right now around spring practice? And you ask 10 different people, you might get 10 different answers. But the sentiment that I was told when it comes to how Alabama feels right now during spring ball is there's a lot of eagerness within that locker room. A lot of guys transferred out. A lot of guys gone for the NFL draft. But the guys that are still in that locker room in Tuscaloosa, they've heard all that's been said. They've heard about, hey, Nick Saban's not here anymore. Watch Alabama fall off a cliff. Alabama's not going to be Alabama anymore. There's a lot of guys that are like, okay, heard you. Cool. That's how you feel. That's fine. But we're going to go make sure that we prove a point when it's time for those pads to pop and games to actually be played. You can say what you want. You can talk all you want. But guess what? Talk is cheap, and talk doesn't win football games. And so I think they're very eager, kind of similar to how they felt after that Texas game last year. It's a chip on the shoulder. There's a little bit of doubt baked in the public opinion. They don't care. they do not care in Tuscaloosa, and I think that's a healthy place to be from a temperature perspective right now if you're an Alabama football player, an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. So we'll see what happens there, but that's the latest right now when it comes to spring practice. Believe they have another scrimmage here this weekend in Tuscaloosa, so keep it locked right here. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll tell you everything you need to know when it comes to spring ball at Alabama. But if you want to get dialed into the nth degree, Bama Online, the place to get a membership. Again, Alabama's On3 site. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.